Hey, Hilda, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. A little nervous, but I'm good.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming and chat with me. Got you some coffee, if that's all
Oh,
right.
that'd be great.
Um, I just wanted to hear a little bit of your story because I was reading through Genesis the other day, and I was thinking, it doesn't matter where we're from, doesn't matter what our experience has been. All the way since Adam and Eve in the garden, we've been looking for a place to belong. Adam and Eve were created, they were put in the garden, it was a home, and then they sinned and they were sent away. And ever since then, that journey has been trying to get back to God, come back to a place where we belong. You think about Cain, and he was sent to wander because of his disobedience and sin. And I understand sometimes, people have wanderlust or they like to travel or whatever, but at the core of it, we want to get home. We want to get to a safe place. We want to belong. And so it just made me think about your story, and so I appreciate you coming and sharing with me a little bit. Because you weren't born here, right?
No, I wasn't.
Where were you born?
I was born in Ukraine.
Okay.
At that time, it was Russia,
Yep.
But afterwards, it became Ukraine. And, the war started in, 1939?
39, yep.
And before that, there was a lot of unrest
Right.
in Russia.
Yep.
And I was born in May of 1937.
Okay.
And in November of 1937, the Russians sort of came in, to our home
Okay.
and broke down the door. And
Wow.
they figured because we were German, because this was a whole German village, that my father was a spy.
Right.
And there had been a lot of the men from our village missing over the certain.
Okay.
Every once in a while, somebody was missing.
Didn't come home, yeah.
Didn't come home. So that night they came in and they took my father, and
Wow.
I guess to Siberia. We'd never seen him since or heard from him since.
Right. Okay.
So my mother was left with the 4 small children.
4 children under the age of,
Well, the oldest at that time was 13. I was
13.
6 months.
okay.
And then when the war finally reached our village, that
Yeah.
was in 1940, I believe, they came in.
Yep.
And as they were winning, they were going further into Russia.
Right.
But then when they had to retreat, the Russians beat them, I guess.
Right.
So then they took all the German people with them.
Right. Okay.
So we went with them in our covered wagon.
Yep.
With all, you didn't get much chance to pack anything. You just more or less just had to leave right then and there. So
So from 6 months old, your whole childhood, you're just on the road, on the journey, trying to find a place
on
where
the
you
move.
belong. On
That's
the
why I
move.
like traveling.
Yes. Yes.
So they took us to a certain, I don't know how far away from our home, but a certain way.
Okay.
And then when the Germans won again, we moved back they took us back to our home.
Okay.
But in 1942, I believe it was,
Yep.
when they finally had to retreat, and they took us with them. They took all the German people.
Right.
There was a whole wagon train,
Okay.
covered wagons,
Yep.
And this was winter. This was in January, I believe,
Wow.
Mom said. And, the roads weren't exactly great, and we were horses.
So that's why you moved to Manitoba, because the winters are so similar.
And the roads are so great, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Very good. Yeah.
So our horse slipped
Okay.
and fell.
Yep.
And the wagon didn't exactly go into the ditch, didn't exactly turn over, but just about. So, of course, these were just women and children that were.
Right.
So they were trying to get the horse up.
Yep.
And in the meantime, they put all the children on my aunt's wagon.
Okay.
And the one thing I remember about that is that we were all very hungry and
Yeah.
all crying and cold and whatever, I guess.
Yeah.
And my mom found half a loaf of bread that she still had.
Wow.
and it was frozen, of course.
Yeah.
So she was trying to get some pieces off to give to each of us so that
Yeah.
we had something to calm us down, I guess, so we stopped crying.
Different time.
It certainly was a different time.
Yeah. There's lots of trauma from an early age that you're working through, and that's hard. All the things that you saw along the way, and then when you got where you were going, it wasn't the best place either, right?
As we were going along, I remember at one point, they were taking us towards Poland, I guess.
Yep.
And then all the planes were overhead with bombs.
Yep.
And we had to get out of our wagon and go into the ditch to hide. And there was a little, I was little too, but I guess there, a girl about my age beside me.
Yep.
And we ran to the ditch. And she was hit by a shrapnel.
Some shrapnel or
Shrapnel.
something. Yeah.
And she was killed right
Wow.
there. I remember that quite distinctly.
Yeah, you would.
So,
Make an impression.
but the thing is, all I kept looking was for my mother. And as long as I had my mother, I felt safe.
Yeah.
Oh, Mom's here, so everything's fine.
And when we're in family, right, we have that safety net, right? We have that place. Not all families are great, obviously, but yeah, that's what it's designed to be by God, is a place where we can be safe and belong. And so you found your mom.
Mm-hmm. And then everybody got back into the wagons.
Yeah.
And we continued our trip. And finally we got to Poland. Must have taken a year or whatever.
Yeah.
And we stayed there, must have been over a year, because I remember them planting and harvesting watermelons.
Okay.
So that's what, and then in 1945,
Yep.
I guess that was about then,
The war ended. Yeah.
the war ended, and we were taken into Germany.
Okay.
And my mother and my aunts, they went to look for a job somewhere to work.
Okay.
And there was this farmer. Weren't farmers like these days.
Right.
Farmers here in Canada, but they
yeah.
were small Bauernhof.
Okay.
And this lady, her husband was also in the army.
Okay.
She took me, and my mom and my aunt, they had to milk the cows and that. And they were allowed 1 glass of milk
Wow.
a day, which they didn't drink. They gave to us children, of course.
Of course.
They
Yeah.
figured we needed it more.
Yeah.
But really, that lady was very good to us.
Okay.
You know, she really helped the women there.
So what happened? How come you're not living there in Germany then, if she was so good to you?
Well, the Russians came. We were living in a small village there as well. And the mayor of that town, his son was a prisoner of war in Russia.
Okay. Yep.
And when they came in, the soldiers came in and they said they would like to trade his son.
Right.
If he gives us, if he lets all of these Schwarzmeerdeutschen, like these people, their people they called us,
Yep.
Russians.
Yep.
We can go back to Russia,
Yep.
then he can have his son. That would be
Okay.
a
So
trade.
to do a trade, and of course he agreed to that.
What father wouldn't,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Give me my son. These people weren't anything
Right.
for him.
So then, how'd you escape there then?
Well, my mom said that, and the rest of the women said they would not go back to Russia no matter what.
Okay.
And 3 of the families went back, but they didn't get too far,
Okay.
and they were all
Yep.
killed.
Okay.
So then when Mrs. Bosse, the lady that owned this place, asked the women why they didn't want to go back, because the Russians had promised our house would be there, my father would be waiting,
All their
everybody's
husbands and
husband
dads would
home.
be there. Yeah.
But my mother said, no, she doesn't believe that.
Yeah.
And she said, you can shoot us right here, but we're not going back.
Okay.
So they said, well, they're going to leave now, and then after, they'll be back again, and then we'll have to go by force.
Oh,
We
so they'll
wouldn't-
just take you back.
They'll just take us.
Right.
We would have no choice.
Okay.
Well, after they left, Mrs. Bussa wanted to know why we wouldn't want to go back.
Mhm.
So then Mom explained that to her. She says, well, in that case, I'll help you hide out. And she gave us a wagon, and she said she had a hunting lodge in the Black Forest,
Okay.
and we could go there and hide out. And when it was safe enough, she would send someone to let us know.
Okay.
So, which she did. When I think we were there probably about 2 weeks or
Couple
so,
weeks, yeah.
a certain number of days.
Yeah.
And then she sent one of the other workers and let us know that it was safe now
Safe
to
and
come
came
out.
back. It's fascinating to me, that part of the story, because this was in Germany that this happened.
Mhm.
And so you said that this lady's husband was also in the war,
Right.
but she
right.
would have been on the other side. And then, right? And yet she was still kind.
She
She
was-
was still helpful,
She
right?
was helpful too.
And you've mentioned this story to me a few times, and you don't know, or at least you don't relate anyone else's names, but you know this woman's name,
yeah.
right? The sacrifice she made, the willingness that she had to take a risk, that she was willing to do something for you guys to keep you safe, right?
Right.
I think if we want as a church and believers to make a name for Jesus, sometimes that's what it takes, right? It isn't just about saying things, it's about action, it's about doing things.
Right.
So you escaped there.
Well,
Then how'd you get to Canada?
my mother remembered her stepmother's brother who
Mhm.
had immigrated to North America.
Yep.
And he remembered Mom because apparently he came to visit just before they left for North America.
Mhm.
And he remembered Mom and Dad had just gotten married, and he wanted them to go with him. But my grandfather thought everything was settled down and Russia would be their home forever. So, but she remembered him, and she put an ad in a German paper, the Nordwesten, which was circulated in the United States and Canada. And Grandpa Dowderick, that was his name, his daughter lived in Swan River, and she happened to read the paper. And then she got in the car that night and went over to Minnetonka, where her dad lived,
Yeah.
and said that this lady was looking for him. So, and he remembered Mom, so he's, oh yes, and he right away sent us a care package
Mhm.
and started the process of getting us across to Canada.
Okay.
But at that time, when we came in 47, you could only come over to work on sugar beets.
Okay.
And apparently sugar beets didn't grow in Swan River or Minnetonka, wherever. So
You should tell Ed he should put some sugar beets in here.
I don't want to work on sugar beets anymore. So, but his son lived in Moores,
Yep.
Henry Dowderick. And so his son planted sugar beets so that we could come over.
Yep. Good.
But
So what was it like coming to Canada? Did you come to this church? Had you been to church before?
I'd been to church
Because
once
you're young
before.
when you came, right? I
was
mean, you're still
10.
young, but you were younger then.
Yeah, of course. I'd been to church once in Germany
Okay.
because on the, from Russia to Germany, we were always on the road, so there was
Yep.
no. And usually there was no place to stay,
Right.
on the trek. Even for sleeping, we usually tried to get into a farmer's field or in a farmer's barn. Sometimes they'd allow us, sometimes they wouldn't. But anyway, the first time I was in church was in Germany. It was a small Lutheran church, I believe it was. And we were playing outside, before church started, there's a bunch of kids playing outside. And when church started, everybody went inside. So all the kids went in, so I went in as well. I was playing with this little girl, and she says, well, And then she walked all halfway down the aisle, and then she turned around and says, well, you can't come here, you know. You don't belong here. You have to go and go to the back. Every pew had a little gate,
Oh,
and each family, I suppose they paid for these pews, I
Yeah.
guess. Each family had their own pew, and they went in and they locked that little gate.
so we lock it after the people get in. Okay.
After the people get in,
Yeah.
the people
I
that
didn't know you
paid
could-
for this.
I didn't know you could do that, but
Well, I guess you can do a lot of things if you have the money.
Yep.
So then I had to go back, and
you had
then,
to stand in the back.
then I noticed that all our family was standing at the back.
Okay.
So I went and stood at the back with
Yeah.
them as well.
So is that what happened when you came here?
When we came here, not quite. um, we came in October. It was Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
The Sunday we arrived. At least the church had their Thanksgiving. But Mom and my brothers went, but Mary and I didn't. So the next day we all went to church, and I went to Sunday school.
Yep.
Our pastor was Reverend Sturhan at the time.
Yep.
And his daughter and actually Ed's sister, Doris, they took me sort of because they could speak a little German.
Right.
And so I went with them to Sunday school. And after Sunday school, we came up here to, and I thought, well, I learned my lesson. I'm not going to the
Okay.
front. So
Yeah.
I was staying at the back.
It's embarrassing to be sent back.
Well, yes,
right?
it is
Yeah.
sort of. You
Yeah,
know.
definitely.
So I stayed at the back, and then Doris and Dorothy came and they said, well, you have to go to the front. That's where the children go.
Yep.
So they took my hand and they made me go to the front.
Okay.
And we were able to sit down.
Yeah.
And I was amazed that I was able to sit down here as well. So after church, I went to look for my mom, and I said to her, were you able to sit or did you have to stand?
Yep.
She says, no, we were able to sit.
Okay.
And, well, that seemed odd to me because the only other church I'd ever been to,
Right.
we couldn't, and here we could. So I said, well, what's the difference?
Yep.
So my mom said, these people really love the Lord. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of people in that other church that love the Lord as well,
Probably, yeah. Definitely.
but they didn't show it in that way.
Well, and I think like when Paul's writing to the early church, Peter, James writes and talks about the importance of not looking down on people because they're poor, right? Like your relationship with someone isn't based on their bank account, or at least it shouldn't be in the church. And so I just think it's fascinating because the whole idea of belonging and being a part, right? And our responsibility to help people to be involved and be a part of our group, right? Yes, it should be an extension of us loving Jesus, and then we love other people. That's why in 1 John it says that can't say that we love God, but then not love other people, right? If you don't love others, then you are not telling the truth when you say you love God. And it's important because we want to be a church where we do that, right? This isn't something that's supposed to be, well, 100 years ago, this is what happened, and so we want to be proud of that fact. No, we want that to be the case today, right? To be a place where we can invite people that they can feel welcome, that it's a safe place where they belong on the
Right.
journey, right? And because I always, whenever you tell me this story, it always strikes me that, how many sermons have you heard in this church? Like, how many songs have you sung? But the thing you remember is how you were treated when you were little, right? And the interesting thing is, even though it was just one time, the church experience in Germany, you don't remember anything about that experience except how you were treated. And so it makes me think, how do people respond? How do we respond when people come to us wanting to know about Jesus? What do they remember? Maybe there's an eloquent sermon, maybe there's great music, maybe there's beautiful this or that, but how do we treat people? Do they feel like they are safe? Do they feel like they belong? Are they wanting to be included? Can we help them to make that step, right? And I think we're doing a good job of that. I think we can do better at that. I think it's a matter of, like you say, making sure that we do love the Lord and that that comes out. It's supposed to be the overflow, right? It's not supposed to be we do this and then on Sunday we do this and on Wednesday we do this, and there's discrepancy there. It's supposed to be we love Jesus, and the overflow of that is that it impacts the people that we come in contact with, that they see that experience, right? And then our actions make that difference. So.
Well, that's just it. It's the actions, really. Like the church was so good to us. Not only did they welcome us with words and whatever, but they showed it in action. They gave us a shower. And, of course, we came over, we had nothing except a few little bags, I guess. Yeah. And they gave us a shower. We got bags of flour, bags of sugar. The ladies brought all stuff they had put, canned for the season, for the winter, to keep their family with food. But they were so willing to give to us so that we had something. Mm-hmm. And I remember when we came back to the little house we had rented here in Moores, my mother said, we will never, ever have to go hungry again. Mm. The Lord has provided all this for us through loving people that care for us.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing your story. It mirrors what we're going to do here next, right? You think about the fact that God loved us enough to do something about it. Like, he didn't just say, oh, I'm sorry you're in this predicament. He didn't say, well, too bad for you.
Yeah.
He said he loved us, and then he showed us, right?
Exactly.
And he sent his son to die on the cross for our sins, that we might have the possibility of redemption. So, yeah, that's part of the whole reason that we meet, right?
We're finished. I'd just like to say that, our praise team sings a song, all my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. And that's the story of my life, really. God has been so faithful to my family, to me. Yeah. Helping these women can't even imagine that trek from Germany, from Russia to Poland to Germany, mostly all during the winter. And we left there in 42. Yeah. We arrived in Germany in 45. That's, 3 years that were. So all I can say that God has been faithful and is faithful continuously, even if I may be not always as faithful as should be.
Well, in Sunday school, we're going to be talking about the difference between us being faithful, God being faithful and us being fruitful. And so there's a difference there that's expected by him. But like I said, I appreciate you sharing the story, because it's important for us to remember that that place of belonging is available and that he is faithful. And please don't take this the wrong way, but it means a lot more coming from you than it does from me to say that all your life he has been faithful. He's been faithful all my life too.
You're not as old as I am.
I wasn't going to say that.